Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our today roundtable. So I am Nabil DIAB, the Altus Solutions Head of Cyber Defense and Director of Altus Solutions Canada, and it's my pleasure to chair this roundtable. So about our today agenda, it's not just to explore what Zero Trust is, but to delve into how it is essential and how it can be implemented amidst very technological, organizational, and landscapes, and the ways in which it can reinforce against a spectrum of cyber threats. So our goal is to unpack the different layers of Zero Trust, understanding its principles, discussing its strategic, operational, and technical challenges in its implementation, and finally exploring strategies for integrating this model to diverse technological environments. So we aim to provide actionable insights and practical knowledge that can guide your Zero Trust journey. So let's start our introduction. So I let my colleague of this panel to introduce themselves. So Taylor, can you please introduce yourself and give a one-liner about your most significant experience with Zero Trust and our observation?
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I'm Taylor Lehman from the Office of the CISO at Google. I lead our global healthcare and life sciences strategy for cyber, and prior to Google, I was a CISO at a US-based health record company called Athena Health, which is about 60% of US citizens had records on systems I managed. My one-liner, this is a tough one, but I think when I think of Zero Trust, it's trust nothing, verify everything. My experience implementing that sort of statement, which is really a set of principles, beliefs that then get architected into systems, was introducing Zero Trust at Athena, and then subsequently at Google being able to sort of help work side by side with the teams that are implementing the largest implementation of Zero Trust, both for networks, platforms, systems, and software in the world.
Good morning, Alexander from SI Innovation. Said I have a complicated title, but in a nutshell, basically I help company bringing to the next level, cybersecurity being a big part of it. My one line around Zero Trust is really, for me, it's kind of, it's a journey. It's not something that you can just open the book and make it happen. I mean, everything is individual. As you said, it's a framework. It's a series of principles. And basically, you need to adapt it. I mean, I like the notion of the cookbook. It's basically you have a recipe, somebody did it, but when you do it yourself, it's going to be slightly different, and somebody else going to do it is going to be slightly different. So that's what Zero Trust is about. I mean, it's a journey, and it's a wish that everybody would like to get to, and it's transforming really businesses from today to tomorrow. So.
Good morning. My name is James CHRISTIANSEN, VP at Netscope here. Long time history. Can you all hear us all right? I heard yesterday it was hard to hear, so if you can't hear, just let us know. So I've been in security a very long time. Started off first as CIO kind of roles and then transitioned over. I was the first global CISO for Visa International, rolled out that program worldwide. There to General Motors as their first global CISO, so operations, both financial and manufacturing worldwide. To Experian as their first CISO. So you kind of get the pattern. I really like creating programs. I can't hold a job more than 2 years. It sounds like, you know, when you go through all the resumes. But so long-term practitioner and now working with clients on how to deploy the Zero Trust, what, you know, pitfalls not to fall in, how to be successful as a CISO. That's really my goal.
Hello, good morning. So my name is Ludovic De Luca. I'm working for SIGPA. So SIGPA is a Swiss-based company, and we are producing ink for banknotes and value documents. We are also helping governments to fight for and we are providing a unique technology combining physical and digital security. And not later than in June this year, we open a huge campus in the Lausanne area, so this is in Switzerland, and it's behind the concept economy of trust. And the idea is to bring together, let's say, the academics, startups, established company, and this is helping us to providing our next generation of products. So I am leading the cybersecurity activities over there, and since, let's say, 2 years, we have started a Zero Trust program.
Thank you for your introduction. So our varied experience and position we have regarding Zero Trust sets the stage for a rich and varied discussion. That's really good. And so before going deeper on that discussion, it's essential to have some shared foundation regarding the term of Zero Trust. As many of you have noticed, the term Zero Trust can differ significantly regarding the context or the individual and organization discussing it. So that's why I believe our discussion will be richer and more productive if we craft a shared definition together. So to get us started, I will start with a brief generic definition of Zero Trust, and I will let you the opportunity to complete it with your feedbacks and experience. So Zero Trust is often encapsulated by the philosophy, never trust, always verified. Instead of relying on traditional network boundaries, every access request, regardless of its origin, is treated as untrusted. The goal is to constantly verify every request, ensuring robust authentication, authorization, and encryption. Maybe I let you begin to continue, feel this, Alexandre, go ahead.
Yeah, that's a very good start. I mean, I would call it, that's a theoretical definition. When I look at it from my angle, I said it's a journey. It's a journey that will require a toolkit to be implemented. Will require some methodology. There is some patterns that are there. It also requires expertise to get, from the outside, because as I said, there is no recipe that you can just say, okay, I'm going to apply this. Even if we look at what Google did, and I was reading a book about it, I tried to apply it to my own organization, to some clients that we're helping, and it will not fly as is. So you need to have that expertise that will help you, I'll call it, not getting into the pitfalls, making sure that you're able to adapt what is there. And I will call it, the last piece is you need to have the human aspect is very important. You need to get buy-in, both from the management and from the people at the bottom to actually make it happen. So your definition, with I'll call it that formula, is for me what Zero Trust is about.
So I would add sort of a layer down. What Zero Trust is just a networking technology. It's not a switch. It's not a proxy. It's not a multi-factor authentication. It's not one thing. And I know I love coming to cyber conferences because I think we've gotten better at describing what Zero Trust is. But I know for years people were like, buy my switch and you'll have Zero Trust. It's not something you can just buy either. It's not something you just turn on. At Google, Zero Trust manifests in 3 ways. We have your traditional Zero Trust. It's kind of funny. We have a Zero Trust for network access kind of model that I think most people would say is their understanding of Zero Trust, where users, devices, activity, behavior all combine into a request for resources that get authenticated, then authorized, and subsequently access preferred. This is the whole get rid of your VPN sort of approach. That's sort of, I think, the most common definition. But to extend even further, this applies to hardware too for us. So every component in every data center authenticates against other components in the data center to boot servers, to load software, to make network connections to other in-data center issues. So whereas Zero Trust might be a network connectivity sort of belief, it's also extended to Zero Trust concepts and principles that apply at a hardware level. And then I'd also say the third major manifestation is around software deployment. So when you build software, when you test software, when you deploy software, when you run software, those same Zero Trust principles about don't trust anything about where this piece of software came from, don't trust that it's necessarily secure now, or that it will be at some point, or be insecure, like trust nothing about the package, where it came from, how it's running, the users connected to it too. And so that manifests for us as like, a supply chain problem and how we look at how we build and deploy software. So for us, it's like three major things. It's network, it's hardware, and data center operations, and then it's software.
Yeah, Zero Trust. First, I don't like the term Zero Trust. You go to your executive team or your management team and say, hey, I'm implementing a Zero Trust project. And they'll look at you and, oh, he's the security guy, doesn't trust anybody. That's not the reaction I want, right? So I try to use the term adaptive trust. And if I say to a CISO, Zero Trust, they're going to say ZTNA. Oh, yeah, we did it. We put RSA tokens, we're done. And that's not Zero Trust. But if you start thinking about adaptive trust, that term, if I use that in the exec team, they go, what's that? What does that mean? It means that I'm looking at the geography, the device, the application, their behavior, and I'm building trust within our organization. That's more of a positive connotation, right? So think about Zero Trust as a journey, as a set of technologies, processes, and people you're going to implement to meet those standards that we talked about in Zero Trust, the true definition of start with zero and build up. The problem we've had in the past is we went from Zero Trust to full trust, right? They authenticated, we trust them. So think about adaptive trust when you hear it. How am I going to implement adaptive trust using Zero Trust principles? A little bit turn on that statement.
Yeah, maybe Ludovic wants to add some.
So for me, Zero Trust is the biggest transformation that IT security will have. And the reason is because we are facing a new reality today. If you look the way how we are working, and if you consider the change that we have, for instance, with the cloud, you can see that data are everywhere. Everyone wants to connect to our system, customer, third party, and this is challenging really the model that has been put in place over the last 20 years. And because of that, we need to reinvent. We need to make sure that we address this issue with a new way of securing communications between a user and an application or a data. So for me, this is what I think, and this is what we are implementing currently at SIGPA.
Okay. Thank you all for your feedbacks about Zero Trust. So now we have this shared definition. We now know how what are the experience of each person of this panel. I propose to go deeper in different segment of discussion. So the first one is the journey toward Zero Trust. Why and how make the move? So I will address my first question to Taylor. So Taylor, can you tell me where there are specific incidents or evolving market trends that spotlighted Zero Trust as an essential move?
Well, I mean, I think people want to stop getting destroyed and deleted off the internet as a business imperative, and we certainly see that more and more, these days, especially with even software-defined networks, use of cloud computing, use of more open source. Right, there's many more avenues into an organization than that are aware to us than there perhaps were years ago, and yeah, the end result of not being good at cyber is, as we've seen in too many cases, you're deleted off the internet or you're done. So if that's not an imperative enough, and obviously we don't want to, good, smart cyber leaders don't lead with the existential threat of being bad at cyber. That's not always a smart way of approaching this, especially with trying to get buy-in from their business. But the years and years of experience that we've had trying to defend against highly advanced actors has led us to a security model that actually seems to work. You know, many of you may know, in case you don't, Google was attacked in 2009. It was one of the sort of most prominent, sort of publicly discussed security incidents at that time. And following that event, when we did the retrospective and looked at, well, what went wrong, one of the things that we discovered was that we had placed trust in things that didn't deserve it. You know, we'd placed trust in passwords. We'd placed trust in perfect human execution of security controls. We'd placed trust in firewalls. But we were a global company of 100,000 or so individuals with networks and sites everywhere. And it took one sophisticated actor, or not actor, but actor group, to exploit easy to see weaknesses to then carry out a number of attacks that focused on political dissidents, human rights work that we were doing, support of journalists that were working with us, et cetera, to make it very clear that you know, our business at the time was threatened by this greatly. That meant every other business at the time was threatened greatly. Was threatened greatly by this, and at that time, I think you know, it became very clear that not only did we need to change the security paradigm, that the hard outer shell of firewalls and even segmenting networks wasn't going to work, that we needed to address the issue at the human layer, the device layer, the network layer, the software layer, the cultural layer of the company to really get this done. And I would say, you know, starting out, the thing that was available at Google that may not always be available, certainly wasn't my experience when I was a CISO, was a full executive understanding of what these risks and concerns are. And I will tell you, having now done this a couple of times, the thing that I've learned is the existential threat of getting this wrong is never the right answer. The way we adapt and build business flexibility and agility is the right answer. And in my experience, I've seen my security teams get better and better as we move down this path. I've seen our teams be able to respond more and faster as we go down this path. And there's been business benefits of going down this path too. Faster onboarding, faster offboarding, more sustainable processes within our IT teams, which means we're more efficient and better and faster.
Okay. So. Is somebody else wants to talk about the motivation? Why are we moving to zero trust?
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, I mean, I'm looking at it from a business agility perspective. I mean, and I know several companies in Quebec that will relate to this. Line of business has great ideas. They want to integrate new technology. They find a cloud vendor and they say, yeah, I would like to use that. And then you're looking at it and say, okay, this is going to own PI information. This is going to need to interface to my Active Directory. This is going to interface to a lot of things. So how can I make sure I trust that? And when it gets to, I will call it that multi-cloud and that I will call it work from home is another challenge. So when you get about all this distribution, you need to have kind of a framework, a set of tools, a set of ideas that will make sure that you can trust it. And even from a development perspective, I mean, I was having a chat with the development team earlier this week. We were looking at and it's all good programmers that graduated about 10 years ago. And they're like me. I mean, they're looking at it saying, okay, once I pass the first gate, why would I worry about the rest? Why would I worry? My code is secure. I'm saying, wait, it's not about you not writing properly. It's about you need to make sure that every single piece is modular that can interface with the other. And that's the goal, because it's going to be easier to interface down the road. It's going to bring agility to your DevOps. It's going to bring agility to your business. So for me, that's one of the big reasons why you want to go with Zero Trust.
Okay, thank you. So maybe.
You know, I want to jump on one of the things you said I think is really important, my colleague here. That's being agile. Well, whatever I'm doing as a CISO, I have to relate it back to the business. How am I enabling the business? And when you start to look at the Zero Trust principles and implementing the different technologies involved, each one of those can be a process. We're going to talk more about implementation, so I'll save it for that. But I think the real tipping point for Zero Trust is when the pandemic, and we started seeing so many remote workers. We had to enable those remote staffs in very broad places where we'd never allowed remote work before. So we really had to adapt the way we're approaching this, and agility, man, that's a great word.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe we talked about why zero trust. Let's talk about how zero trust now. So, Ludovic, can you outline the key steps or phases your organization underwent in the transition in zero trust?
Yeah. So first of all, I want to say that I agree with James. I also don't like the word zero trust. And definitely, if you look, SIGPA has, kind of a motto, and behind the logo, there is two words, that is enabling trust. So we are enabling trust in our work, and therefore coming to the management and say, hey, we are enabling trust with zero trust, it really doesn't make sense. So the first things that I do is that I rebrand completely the program. We decided of a different name, and we try to minimize the use of zero trust inside the company. Then, for me, I am a strong believer that it's a big change, and to change you need a team. So we started to build a team, and the first target was really a technical team. So we went through the different departments and we say, okay, who will be the relevant people for identity, network, OT, what will be the architect, the SOC, and we build this team. But we realized that it's not enough. Because if we want to change and if we want to move forward within zero trust, we really need other role, not only technical. So we ask ourselves what should be the good combo in order to really move forward. And we are very lucky because at SIGPA we have a change team. So the change was onboarded, but not only we onboard communications, because as I rebrand the program, we needed to communicate it, but also the HR. As I mentioned earlier, for me, the biggest change is in the human side. You know, you take a network guy that was doing the same job for the last 20 years. Right now, you are coming and you are telling him you are going to work differently. Because definitely with the approach of zero trust, what you are going to do is very different than what you were doing in the past. You need to create with him this mindset in order to make the change. So we had also HR with us, help us with training and so on. As soon as we build the team, we build the governance because we believe that this team needs to be managed. So we had defined different governance body in order to ensure the program goes on. And one of the first outputs of the whole team was the journey. Technical projects that are for us very important. And we split them into different categories. So identity, network, data, you know, all the CISA pillars. We defined the maturity level where we are, and we define if we want to do this project. And basically with that, we are able to be clear where we are going, because we have the journey that is very clear to all of us, and everyone understand what will be the achievement and what will be the project that we are going to do. So this is for technical side, but for all the human and the change aspect, we did the same. And so far it's very good, very successful.
Okay.
I will look at it from a different angle. I like what you said. When I'm looking at how to do zero trust, the first thing I always tell my teams and my client is, okay, do you know what you own? Do you know data that you have? Do you know where it resides? Do you know what you have? You need to have a kind of a map, because as we said, it's a journey, and a journey starts with a map. I mean, you need to start from here where we are and here where we want to go. And when we're looking at it saying, okay, here's what we own, then we need to look at it from, I'll call it a technology perspective. So, okay, how is the flow happening for this data? And then you need to look at, okay, how can I secure each of these points to make sure that really they don't necessarily trust, or they don't do it necessarily implicit trust by default between each other. So for me, that's a big aspect of how you get started, because most of the companies I know, they have a very fluid or loose understanding of what data they own, where it resides, what it is, and that makes it difficult, because at the end of the day, what the hacker wants, and the main reasons why you're doing zero trust, is to prevent wrong access to your data or wrong transaction being created, which is going to be generating data as well. So you need to have this notion of mapping, and for me, that's how I'll call it the starting point of the journey. Want to add something?
Is somebody wants to add something? Yeah.
I want to hear what he has to say too. I'll just say, without skipping over, the most important part is like, how do you get started? You get a bunch of your customers together, calling your CEO and your executive team, demanding that your company adopt a strong security posture. I've seen more zero trust projects get started that way than I have seen a really savvy CISO come in and argue the business agility benefits and all these other things. And I'll say the hardest problem you're going to run into is not how to get your file shares migrated to cloud storage. It's going to be to get senior leadership buy-in on these projects. And the best way to do that, in my opinion, is to do it from it's going to have valuable adjacent commercial benefits, versus the other, unfortunately, almost equally successful way of funding a zero trust project is from an incident, which you don't want. And I think it's lazy advice to say you should wait for that to happen before you fund your program. And then the third and most distant remote is the savvy CISO scenario, where they can speak the language. We'd love to see more of that. But getting your customers to demand strong security is the best way to get started, in my opinion.
Okay. Yeah, your feedback, Taylor, is directly related to our next segment, which is implementation challenges. And so I will ask this next question to James. So from a strategic standpoint, what were the top challenges or concerns you faced when you're deciding to adopt zero trust model, especially considering the business goals and objectives?
Right. I ran PMO for Visa for a number of years, any project 20 million or above. And if you've got a project that spans a budget year, it's going to fail 65% of the time. And you think about it, how many have implemented identity management over 10 years, and it literally was three leaders doing it, right? So when you start out on a zero trust project, first of all, you've got to lay it out in milestones. Try to make those milestones under a budget year and get those successes, get those quick wins. It doesn't matter, zero trust, any project, make sure you do that, you'll be more successful. So more successful CISOs, better CISOs, are breaking up zero trust into a roadmap. They're laying out the roadmap of how they're going to achieve it and taking that win each step. I got the inventory done. I got the business on board. You know, these are key things to do. It's like my colleague said, if you don't have the business behind this, you haven't shown them the benefits, you're doing this more of a, we'll call it a skunk works, I don't know if that translates well, project, you will fail. You will fail, and it'll be the next CISO that implements it. By the way, that CISO that waits for the breach to get the funding to implement this stuff, it's not them that gets the CISO, it's the next one gets the money. So don't wait for that either. Be aggressive, work with your executive team, lay the foundation. We need to educate them on why and what the benefits of the business are. Before you're ever starting, you should be doing that now. You should be telling them every day you're in a meeting with them, every chance you get, the benefits your current programs bring and what zero trust does. So when I start looking at zero trust and an implementation, I'll be looking first at, where's my data? Where's it flowing? I've got to know that. Right, I got to understand my risk, because I want to address the highest risk things first. So I'm taking a risk-based approach. I'm going to then get visibility, right? I've lost visibility. Everything went to cloud. Everything went remote. They're bypassing the data center. All my controls are negligent. Then I'm going to look at, okay, now I've restored visibility and I can see where my risks are. I'm going to start now turning in some controls. I'm going to do like a DLP, CASB kind of solutions to kind of start controlling that traffic. And I'm not going to throw it in all at once. I'm going to do like coaching, I call it, where I'm going to say, or warn mode. And that's one of the key successes too. When you start to implement these restrictions on people, don't just throw them in. Put them in warm mode, tell people you're doing, give them a coaching message that says, hey, what you're about to do has a lot of risk. Either click here to redirect or proceed, and they can enter. And that's a good way to get started. Then, of course, you're going to start doing the network segmentation, more of an SD-WAN. I look at those processes. And a ZTNA project is definitely in there, but it's not zero trust. It's one element of your journey, a roadmap. And I know this is a lot to go through in this audience, but if later, if you like, go ahead, reach out. I'll kind of lay that roadmap. I've drawn it out. And oh, by the way, one more thing. As you're implementing this stuff, take out the legacy stuff. Remove it. We're really good as CISOs at implementing new stuff. What we're not good at is decommissioning. So you're paying all that money, keeping those things, and those become vulnerabilities because you don't keep the maintenance up. Take them out, decommission. Don't let that piece go unnoticed. All right.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, and your last point is actually a very good point. When I look into Zero Trust journey, one of the big challenges, other than I'll call it the cultural aspect that we talked about, is basically keeping up with the legacy stuff. I mean, especially when you're looking at app modernization, you're going in where we're talking about multi-cloud, AI is going to come into the play. These legacy are difficult to basically connect to this because you will need to build an extra layer, sometimes 2 extra layers to build it. Some of the vendors are modernizing. When you're looking at mainframe, you're looking at mid-range and stuff like that. The vendors are helping to getting there. But I mean, I met clients where, okay, the stuff is all almost in flat files into a file system, and that's how they're managing. And I'm talking about government entities that are in Quebec. We're not talking about small organizations. And these guys were looking, okay, how can I make this more secure? I'm saying, okay, you need to scrap the whole thing. You're not going to be able necessarily to only put security on top. You need to reinvent this process. So his point is very, very valid on one of the challenges, especially when I will call it the app modernization journey. Zero trust is going, that's going to be, the app modernization is going to be a challenge into that zero trust.
One of the other challenges that we face is, I can call it inertia. So people are afraid to change. And, it's very easy when everything is working. Why should I change? And we try to break that. And when we discuss with the team and try to see why they were against this transformation, we understand that for them, zero trust is not concrete. They didn't understand where we want to go. And so we make a huge work in trying to define internally what it is, and we use for that a model that was based on use cases. So for instance, we try to modelize what is and how is an employee connecting to our systems. And we defined, 15, 20 ways of connecting. And from that, we start to see what are the changes and when we implemented Zero Trust and when it was helping in simplifying our infrastructure, because this is also one of the most important ways, and also simplify the operations of the IT team. So they found their benefits, and with that buy-in, we were able to move forward.
Okay, great. So we discussed in a strategic standpoint. I propose you to answer this question more in operational, technical point of view. So Alexandre, I know you're comfortable with that. So in terms of actual implementation, can you highlight the more significant hurdles your team faced, be in terms of technology, policy, or integration when rolling out Zero Trust?
I'll call it, from an implementation perspective, one of the burners, or one of the, I'll call it the main thing is how do we integrate these tooling. I mean, Zero Trust introduced a lot of new concept. From a technology perspective, it is, I will call it, complex sometimes to understand the big picture. So all this integration and all the rest, that's one of the key aspects that we need to look at. I was talking about like when I'm looking at it from two ways because we do two types of projects. Development project and integration project. Because integration call, we assemble a build of Lego blocks that are from different vendors. So when we look at it from an operation perspective, is to see how is the security going to flow? How is the user authentication is going to work? What is the trust mechanism that we want to put between? We want to use SAML across the board. You want to use OpenID. We want to look at the how we're going to exchange the key, how we're going to secure the information. So we have, especially when we go to cloud, these kind of S3 buckets that are popping like mushrooms, that we're able to make them all secure, trustable. Doesn't matter the vendors. So this is one aspect. When we're looking at from a development perspective, it's that whole concept of making the developer aware of what he needs to do, which means, okay, I always ask the first question, developer, okay, how are the people going to reach you and who is this? And everything starts by defining the policy. When we're looking at it from an operation perspective, that policy definition of figuring out, okay, who needs access to what and documenting it upfront in the project, that makes it a lot easier down the road for everybody to understand. Because one of the big, I will call it hurdle that I've seen in development project is the developer not being aware of what he needs to do. Because at the end of the day, they are the one who implement it. So by defining his policy, going on basically publicizing that and using an agile approach, as we said earlier, that's what from an operation perspective makes it, in my mind, easier.
Okay, thank you. Now, you
I was just going to say writing
yeah.
the assembly to get a storage array to authenticate against a RESTful API was probably that was attached to our certificate infrastructure was probably the most technically challenging thing because some of that code doesn't work with the other. I'd say on the zero trust for networking side, the biggest challenge was protocol support. Trying to put everything behind a TLS proxy server sounds like a good idea, but it breaks a lot of stuff. So protocol support, really hard to do. Yeah.
Great. Okay, thank you. So we have seen how and why we have to move to zero trust. We have seen that this is a real journey and it is not easy. But let's talk about some solutions in terms of if you have. It can be scary if you have an environment very I don't know how to heterogeneous, yes, environment. So let's answering the questions of this round table. So first, so Alexandre again, can you tell me how can the complexity of implementing zero trust in heterogeneous technological environments be managed?
So when looking at heterogeneous, I mean, that one of the challenges actually to find the standard, to find a common layer. I will call it, looking at it, I mean, modernization of application makes it a bit easier. When you're looking at containers, when you're looking at Kubernetes, OpenShift, all these platforms will help you actually have this common layer. And most of the vendors are starting to adhere to the to do concept like, for example, SAML, OpenID, and encryption algorithm, TLS, and stuff like that. So that for me is the very important aspect to look at. And when we're looking at all this, I will call it trying to build a suite. So for me, it's when you're looking at heterogeneous, you try to define patterns, and you need to basically document these patterns. So when you have a new one that's coming in, a next one is coming in, that's going to make it easier. And we need to not be afraid, and I use that in a lot of implementation, creating wikis. I'm saying I'm creating design zone, I'm creating development zone, and I'm telling the guys, every time you learn something, put it there, explain it. And then what we do in terms of in these heterogeneous system and RS, when it becomes complex, when there is something cool that we learn, we actually organize monthly, I'll call it internal presentation, we called it the cool stuff to know, saying, okay, here's the new patterns that we define, here's the new stuff that we learn, and this way we're able to share, because collaboration is the key. Because especially when you're going to, I said earlier, when you're getting into multi-cloud, when you're getting into hybrid cloud, when you need to interface with legacy system, if you're trying to make it always the same, it's not going to work. You need to adapt your pattern. You need to adapt your integration string to all of these elements, and that's what's going to make it successful.
So as you're thinking about this, how many are familiar with Secure Service Edge, Gartner's term for integration? So if you're going to start looking at going down this path, make sure your solutions, because remember, it's not, you don't buy zero trust. I think that was real clear here. You're going to buy solutions, right, that are going to fit there. Use an architecture that's going to give you that common integrated platforms, because the days of implementing best of breed are gone. You can't afford it. You can't afford it from money. You can't afford it from people. So you've got to reduce your load. So make sure they work together well. It's a common platform that will talk to each other. And remember, I talked a little bit about adaptive trust. Let me dive a little bit more into that, because the solutions are going to give you that geometry you need. You need to know what kind of device is it coming from. Is this a managed device? Is this one of our laptops, or is this an iPad that I don't know about? Who is the user? Okay, I know their authentication. Did I upscale their authentication? Can I key that depending on the circumstances? That's the adaptive part. What kind of data do they have? Can I see the context of the data? Can I see they're going to Office, great, but they're going to their personal instance of Office. So I have this visibility. And the reason I want to know that is I know it's sensitive data because I can see the context. So if your solution can't tell you that, you need a different solution. Now I can manage the risk and I say, oh, okay, they're going to go to board materials, very sensitive data, but they're on their corporate laptop. That's cool. We'll let it happen. Let them update it. It's the attorney. They got the right authentication, right? Let me give you a different use case. That same attorney goes to the Starbucks or the coffee shop that night, says, oh, I forgot to update that one piece of material, goes to log in. Now they're on their iPad. Well, you don't want that sensitive data on an unmanaged device, right? So in the past, in a zero trust model, you'd say, no, can't do it. In adaptive trust, you can say, yes, but I'm not going to let you download it. You're going to update it in place. Do you see how you just enabled the business? You just allowed them to do it before in a zero trust or, not an adaptive way. You'd had to say no. So now you can say yes, but, and you're going to be able to enable what they're doing. So think about that as your implementation strategy about how they're going to work together. Are they going to provide the telemetry you need to enable the business to be more agile and to implement those projects the business needs at the speed they're going today, which is quicker than ever? So absolutely essential that you pick that architecture and you deploy to that architecture over the time of the roadmap. Make sense?
Yeah. Sure. So, and Ludovic, can you tell me how can interoperability and compatibility with existing system can be ensured?
Yeah, so first of all, I wanted to say that we are all doing zero trust without knowing it. So a lot of IT security practice and cybersecurity are going in the sense of zero trust. And if you have implemented some standards, then you have already a very good level of security. And then the journey that seems to be so far could be a little bit easy to start and to achieve. Second, I think that zero trust is a moving target. So meaning that it's not because you start today, you have something in mind and you start a project to achieve it, that at the end you will achieve everything. You need to be agile. You need to understand that you need to change way of doing things, and you need to understand when is the right moment to do it. And if you look from cybersecurity perspective, what's the benefits of zero trust? Because at some point we need to commit to our management with that. For me, there is two. and it's very related to the kill chain. So the first one is to mitigate the surface of attack. We need to make sure that we limit the way our attacker can get in. And the second is to limit lateral movement. So in order to do that, we had started a review of all the technology that we have in place. And from this review, we have been able to achieve that we can mutualize some of them. The idea is really to go in a way how we simplify our infrastructure. So there is, of course, interoperability that needs to be taken place. But if you think in that way, you will really limit the impact of these challenges, and you will be able to remove all what you have implemented and move to, something much more robust that will help you to really achieve some good results as a starting point.
If somebody wants to add something about that, no, it's okay. So yes, let's move to a last question for you. Do you have any notable successes or learning you'd like to share? Is somebody, maybe Taylor, has?
Yeah, I think somebody mentioned it earlier. Hopefully I'm holding it correctly. We were given some pretty detailed instructions on how to hold these things, so I hope I'm doing it right. I forget who mentioned it, but one of the real secrets to doing this well is this concept of workaround architecture. So almost every project starts with like a zero trust for networking goal. And many of us approach these projects thinking, I have to set this system up, and then I have to cut apps over to it, and it's an all or nothing thing. So every app has to be 100% ready to go, and then I'm going to cut over and hopefully sunset the old one. And it never works that way. And we put these high stakes on these projects being successful by saying, okay, it's going to quote unquote go live, and there's never a go live. In fact, Google's been at this 13 years. We're still not done. There's still systems at Google that don't have the zero trust thing. But this concept of workaround infrastructure is really important. So what we did is when we started onboarding apps, we said, okay, we have the app. It's accessible through the new mechanisms, and we kept it accessible through the old mechanisms. And as we learned by people using the new mechanism and failing to get what they needed, we could adjust our approach incrementally and onboard more users and more users and more users. And over time, we could even simulate traffic to see, ooh, if we do this, it's going to break that. So we need to make an adjustment and make an adjustment. And over time, we kind of would, over time transition users to the new platform. But we had this workaround infrastructure in place because we knew we were going to need to make exceptions. And that was actually not a bad thing as long as you are diligent about closing them. But that's a really important thing, I think, we get wrong about this is like there's a go live. There's no go live for this. There's no it's on today. Planning for failure, having a plan to address it, incorporating that into the timeline. You mentioned milestones before. We had milestones for standing up workaround architecture. That was probably one of the most important things we did. Is a really important concept that I think oftentimes we get wrong. And it naturally introduces itself anyway, because if you don't have it, you're going to break your project and kill it. So workaround infrastructure, one of Google's little secrets. That and storage or moving to cloud storage. I know not really the most sexy thing, but it actually happened to be the first thing we did.
No, same thing here. I mean, I will call it the move. I will call it moving to Notable success. I mean, being able to move to cloud storage to simplify the way that it is done. I will call it the ability to remove the complexity for the users, because one thing we forget or we mention it quickly is in terms of zero trust. The whole idea is that you prevent wrong access to your data. Who is your biggest weakest point is the user sitting in front of the computer. If you make their life complex, they will try to figure out a way to go around it. So you need, when you're the best or the most success project I had is when we took the time to make it user-centric, and we said, okay, how can we put ourselves into their shoes, making a user experience that makes sense, that will match the security requirement of the company, and making it easy. I mean, I'm going to give you an example that happened in, I'll call it in small clients, and also at our organization. I mean, SIE is not that big in itself. When we create a user, or at clients, I will have like 10, 15, 20 accounts in different systems. Our first step, okay, I'm going to put password managers, so everybody's going to put complex password. And then we say, okay, we're going to look, and we're having issues, or even our clients were having issues. Okay, oh, I forgot this password, I forgot that password, or I'm writing it out on a post-it because it's too complicated. And even when we were putting in place these, I'll call it these password managers, we were saying, okay, it doesn't work. Then we look at it saying, oh, let's try to just put SAML. And SAML makes it that as long as they're logging into their Office Active Directory, they get access to the rest. All of a sudden, we figured out that our calls were dropping. The ability for the users to actually have access to the system properly was simpler. Provisioning the users were simpler. Everything was simpler. And that's, for me, that's one of the key success. When the users find it easy and the admin find it easy, and when you're looking at it from the back seat and you're saying, oh, that makes a lot of sense. And that was it. These are for me key successes that needs to have done.
How many of you have a Zero Trust project going? Raise hands. Yeah, great deal of you. And if you've thought about that Zero Trust project, hopefully we've given you some tips today. You've got a roadmap. You've defined success criteria. How many has the metrics in place that you're tracking and reporting back to your executive team? No? No? You've got to put, that's one of the success criteria is put metrics together so you can report the success and show the value back. Because if you don't do it, it's like all the adages I can't say out loud. You're not going to be able to demonstrate your success. You're going to get a good warm feeling, but the exec team isn't going to know that you've been successful, right? So make sure you've got those reporting mechanisms in place, either monthly to your team or quarterly to your executive board, that you can show how you are decreasing your risk, how you're enabling new business things to do things faster, right? So we put brakes on cars so we can go faster. Show them how you're doing it. Make that a key part of your success program.
So I'm pretty sure that all of you are working with third parties. So for us, one of the elements that we put in place is that we require from our third party, could be consultant or security provider, to explain how they are towards Zero Trust. And I think this creates a lot of good discussions and enable also to raise the maturity of the whole environment. So we put that in requirements. So when we want to purchase something, this is really something companies and needs to comply with.
So, good. Thank you. So 5 minutes left to our roundtable. I propose a Q&A session if if anyone have some question in the audience. No one?
I do have one question.
Oh, there is one question there. Maybe, yes, you have to come on the mic in the middle of the audience.
Hi, gentlemen. So my question was if you personally have seen the effects of Zero Trust in your respective companies, so in terms of reducing hack attacks or whatever. I was just curious and interested. I don't know if you heard.
Have you heard? Can you hear?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, I mean, China hasn't gotten in again, so there's that. That was 2009 for us. One of the really interesting things is our incident response metrics greatly improved, like tremendously. Back to your measurement piece, unexpected, but one of the biggest business benefits is we got a lot of time back from not investigating incidents, which meant we could invest more of that time back into building better ways of detecting attackers, which further drove incidents down. And so we think of it like, hey, we stopped a lot of stuff, and that's good. but we got a lot better at detecting stuff we should be stopping too. And so those things kind of compound on each other. But time saved is time saved. I mean, you can use that time to, treat more patients and produce more ink and, help more customers. And, that's the real business value is you spend less time on toil.
One of the other aspects we saw, or I see implementing Zero Trust is, I said, when you're doing like pure software development, the fact that you're making the user conscientious and they cannot do whatever they want, force them into some patterns, which at the beginning you feel that it's taking you more time, but when you look at the TCO, it's actually lowering down the time it takes to develop, release application because they're forcing themselves to get into more robust pattern, and they're looking at it from, okay, how can I reuse what I've done, because they're lazy by nature and they don't want to reinvent the wheel every time. It makes the project goes faster. That's what I've seen, and so that's one of the big effects.
I'll give you one that my exec team loved. Mean time to onboarding. When they get a new staff, they want them up quick. We were able to reduce that significantly through the single sign-on and then integration of all the tools. So mean time to onboarding went way down, and mean time to problem resolution started going down. So we were able to tie those events together.
No, just one point. We, thanks to Zero Trust, have implemented a lot of automation, especially in the SOC. And definitely we've seen that this gives more time to the team to perform other tasks and automated different kind of detection, but also response. So for us, results are here.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, we have another question. We have time for one more.
It's not a question, it's more an opportunity to present my company. You say Zero Trust is complicated to the developer and the company to deploy. And we create an API to make encryption, end-to-end encryption very easy and deploy this system in all companies. And it's a good opportunity for the Zero Trust in companies.
Okay. Thank you. I don't think we should be doing advertising here. And so, do you have one question here? No? It's okay. Yeah, so we're okay. 2 minutes left. I think we can conclude this one table.
Just go wrap up?
Do you want to add something? No, it's okay.
No, I was just going to wrap up.
Yeah. You're going to find. So
as you think about what you've heard today, I think we've got some great stuff that I'm sure each of our would like to leave you with one last thought. My last thought in Zero Trust is it's a journey. It's a goal. Define those milestones. Take those wins. Take the credit for the wins to show your success.
Think big, start small.
Yeah, typically I add one sentence to that. Think big, start small, scale fast after. That's the...
And the last word.
Get insurance is mine. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for these last words. Yeah. So thank you all for attending. We are closing this round table, and thank you for the panel.